The standards of care.
That's the standards of care. That's not a journal. That's not a study. That's not an organization. That's not an institution. You're just saying words. Name one study. Yeah. I'm out of time.
She insists that her position, only hers, represents standard medical care. What she doesn't want you to know is that there is no standard. There's a debate. There's a fierce debate. And on the side opposite her stand such prominent figures as Stephen Levine, Kenneth Zucker, Paul McHugh, and James Cantor, among others. These doctors are giants in the field. They have been treating transgender patients and gathering data and publishing papers about them, and I mean no disrespect here, but since before Dr. McNamara was born.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. We got to take a look at a few clips of a congressional hearing where this woman here, Dr. Meredith McNamara, who is an assistant professor of pediatrics at Yale, was talking to Dan Crenshaw, and he basically destroyed her in a debate where he was asking, where are the facts that says these gender affirming transitions and, you know, the ways they go about gender affirming care, whether it be puberty blockers or, you know, certain cosmetic surgeries, where does it say that this is the standard? Where does it say that this stuff actually does work? You know, where is the efficacy of this stuff written down? You know what I mean? How do we know that this is really life-saving? And she could not provide any source for that. And then after we watch that clip, we got to get into the lady right next to her, Dr. Miriam Grossman, who took it to her again. So she got the double whammy here in these clips we about to watch. So with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe while we watching. Now let's get into it.
You've said that we've cherry-picked data. How do you mean that?
So it is very unscientific and flawed to pick a single study or a single statistic and to discuss it in isolation.
Totally agree.
Medical experts are able to talk about all of the evidence as a whole.
Totally agree. So it's good to look at systematic reviews, right? That's the gold standard of evidence when you're trying to understand whether something works or whether it doesn't. So the British Journal of Medicine looked at 61 systematic reviews with the conclusion that, quote, there is great uncertainty about the effects of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries in young people. Journal of Endocrine Society came up with the same conclusion, even the American Academy of Pediatrics. They all cite the lack of evidence. And so here's the thing. If you're doing a therapy, and it's, you know, temporary.
So I just want to pause and take note. He said that the British Journal of Medicine looked at 61 systematic reviews and ultimately came up with the conclusion that there is still a lack of evidence, even after looking at all of that. You know, her claim was that they like to cherry pick data. Well, the British Journal of Medicine did not cherry pick data. They looked at 61 different systematic reviews, not just, you know, little statistics here and there, 61 different systematic reviews. So how is she going to reply to this?
If you're doing a therapy and it's, you know, temporary, whatever, fine, maybe let's try it. Let's see if it works. But when you're talking about permanent physiological changes, do you not agree, just from an ethical standpoint, that you might want extremely strong evidence of the benefits? And there is no systematic review that states that there is strong evidence of benefits.
Sir, are you aware of how the quality evidence grading system works and how it's applied?
Yeah, we've read through it. That's why I'm citing these journals. So which journal says something different? We should have that debate. Tell me a journal that has done systematic reviews that cites different evidence, that cites strong evidence for benefits of these therapies.
The standards of care were developed based on extensive...
You're not telling me any journal, you're not telling me any study. Don't say standards of care.
Yeah. So...
tell me one.
The standards of care.
That's the standards of care. That's not a journal, that's not a study. That's not an organization, that's not an institution. You're just saying words.
So I think the standards of care is generally what most of the people who are for this stuff and who agree with it, I think that's what most of them go to. But apparently that's not a systematic review. You know, that's not, you know, that's just something that was proposed as, you know, as standards of care for people who are struggling with gender dysphoria and, you know, going through transitions and stuff like that. But it's not a systematic review. So on one hand, she says that they're cherry picking data. So she wants the people who are against it to be pinpoint, look at all of the studies and make sure everything is accurate and you know, have all of the data backing them arguing her position. But on the other hand, in her position, all she has to say is, well, the standards of care.
Name one study. Yeah. I'm out of time. I yield back.
So if that wasn't enough, this woman right here, Dr. Miriam Grossman, stepped up to the podium and handed Miss Meredith another L. Let's roll the clip.
My name is Miriam Grossman. I am a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, author, and senior fellow at Do No Harm. I have been taking care of patients for 45 years.
Just watch the smirks that Meredith is making. Watch her just smirking in the side.
I'm going to use my time to respond to Dr. McNamara. First, I'm struck by her use of the phrase sex assigned at birth. Sex is not assigned at birth. Sex is established at conception, and it's recognized at birth, if not earlier. Dr. McNamara claims that her views are science-based, but to claim that sex is assigned at birth is without any scientific basis whatsoever. Its language misleads people, especially children, into thinking that male and female are arbitrary designations and can change. That is simply not true.
Yeah, and I mean, I just did a video earlier where, you know, there was, I did 2 videos today kind of covering this similar topic, but I was talking earlier about how I think that the whole gender expression and gender identity thing has been introduced. I don't know if it was introduced purposely to confuse, but it's this very confusing thing that makes you step away from the binary of man and woman and, you know, journey down some crazy rabbit holes where, you know, you could identify as this, you could identify as that. You know, gender expression, you could identify as anything. You could identify as anything. And like I said, it takes you very far from the binary. And, you know, I think, you know, the gold standard of gender is rooted in biological sex, which is male and female. And that's it at the end of the day. But let's continue.
Dr. McNamara claims that social and medical interventions are the only evidence-based treatment and that scientific evidence shows it is life-saving. Without it, she's warning us, kids will commit suicide. Well, a growing number of countries have effectively banned the care to which she's referring. And thank God there's been no wave of suicides or other mental health catastrophes. 3 years ago.
I'm sorry to stop her, but that's interesting. So she's already hit 2 things. She said that, you know, they often say that self-deletion might occur if this care isn't implemented, and, you know, this goes into the whole standards of care thing. But there are places where they have completely banned it outside of the U.S., completely outlawed it, and, you know, we haven't seen, you know, this. We haven't seen this self-deletion just running rampant. So that kind of disproves the whole premise of this is life-saving, and without it, you know, you will see an increase in self-deletion. And she also just stated not too long ago, you know, they say that your gender is or your sex is decided at birth. Like Dr. Miriam Grossman said, it's not decided when you're born. If you go and, you know, get that checked out prior to a baby being born, you'll know if the baby is, you know, a boy or a girl. You'll know that before the baby is actually born. That's something you can know prior to birth. So also something that they always say, you know, sex being assigned at birth. I don't like the sex is assigned at birth. I want my kid to decide his own gender. You know, they say these ridiculous things like this, but, you know, sex overrides gender, man. You know what sex your kid is before they're even born.
Catastrophes. 3 years ago, Finland placed strict limitations on medical interventions for minors. Sweden did the same thing after a 14-year-old girl was found to have osteoporosis and spinal fractures from puberty blockers. An investigation concluded, quote, the risks of anti-puberty and hormone treatment for those under 18 currently outweigh the possible benefits. The UK conducted a review and called the evidence very low. They've also placed severe restrictions on the care that Dr. McNamara calls life-saving. Norway also analyzed the data and has made similar changes in policy. The National Academy of Medicine in France warned, quote, great medical caution must be taken in children and adolescents, given the vulnerability of this population and the many undesirable, even serious complications the therapies cause. Doctors in New Zealand and Australia have published similar statements. Is Dr. McNamara suggesting that all these countries are rejecting evidence-based treatment and placing their kids at risk of suicide?
See now, dropping bombs. She's not coming with, she's coming with more substance and standards of care. She is dropping actual facts right here. And you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, Dr. Meredith McNamara probably just gonna walk away and, you know, deny a lot of the stuff that Miriam Grossman is saying. But like I said, she's spitting facts and she's coming with evidence, as opposed to this woman right here who all she could really say is standards of care, standards of care, standards of care.
Regarding that point of view, Finland's gender expert, Dr. Rita Kaltiela, said, quote, it's purposeful disinformation, the spreading of which is irresponsible. All 7 countries, and Florida too, of course, concluded that kids don't need their development interrupted, the girls don't need their periods stopped and their voices lowered, and the boys don't need to grow breasts. What they need is psychotherapy. I have other objections to Dr. McNamara's testimony. She insists that her position, only hers, represents standard medical care. What she doesn't want you to know is that there is no standard. There's a debate. There's a fierce debate. And on the side opposite her stand such prominent figures as Stephen Levine, Kenneth Zucker, Paul McHugh, and James Cantor, among others. These doctors are giants in the field. They have been treating transgender patients and gathering data and publishing papers about them, and I mean no disrespect here, but since before Dr. McNamara was born.
Chills. Like I told you guys, she came through dropping bombs, said these people been doing this since before this lady was even on this earth. Quit playing. Before she was even on this earth. And I think the problem is that what we hearing from people like this woman, Dr. Meredith McNamara, is this whole, you know, this big talking point that if we don't provide the gender affirming care, then, you know, kids will be pushed further to self-deletion. You know, apparently that comes from the standards of care for, you know, people suffer with gender dysphoria or people who want to transition. But I think what they need to know is the truth. They need to know that the grass is not always greener on the other side. Show them both sides of this, you know, show them the negatives and show them the positives. Don't present this to them don't present it to them in a way where it's like, oh, you need this, and if you don't have this, you'll die. Don't push them off the ledge. Show them the good and the bad, you know, because there are risks, and the risks seem to be just as big, if not bigger, when you go through with these drugs and these, you know, the hormones and the surgeries and the transitions and all of this stuff. You know, a lot of this stuff is irreversible, and once you do this, you know, it ain't no going backwards. Once you go far enough, once you get far enough down the conveyor belt, it ain't no coming back. So the worst part is that people like this are the voices speaking to the transgender community and to all the people who are outraged about not providing gender affirming care. And if you don't provide gender affirming care, you're a bigot and this and that. But they're doing so with a lack of evidence. They're doing so without the evidence being strongly in their favor. It's like this is an experiment. I know it's cliche to say, it's been said so many times on videos like this, but I'll go ahead and say it again. It's so many things that you have to wait until you're a certain age to do. So why should this be any different? Potentially changing your life forever, you know, messing with your own development while it's at, you know, while it's at one of its peak stages. Why? You know, why should this be allowed? You know, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. And the evidence doesn't even support that it's a good idea. The evidence is not even there.
The point is that those veteran clinicians and others who have wisdom and experience are ignored because they disagree with the current narrative. They're against medical interventions for the same reason those 7 countries are. There is no evidence of long-term benefit, but there is evidence of harm. I'll end by quoting Jamie Reed, the courageous whistleblower from the Children's Gender Clinic in St. Louis. I believe that hospital receives the medical education funding that we're discussing today. She said that doctors at that clinic said, "We are building the plane while we are flying it." We are building the plane while we are flying it. That's how they described the treatment at their gender clinic. Our precious tax dollars should not support such a perilous experiment. Thank you.
Building the plane while we're flying it. And these are the people that we're supposed to trust. These are the people that we're supposed to give our tax dollars to and support. And these are the people who we aren't allowed to question. People who don't even have all of the evidence. They are building the plane while they are flying it. And we just supposed to trust that this plane is going to be built perfectly fine and it's going to land. Man, this plane, as far as I'm concerned, ain't even flying. You know, and the worst part about this is that this woman, Dr. Grossman, is all she's trying to do is keep it real and let it be known that, you know, despite what people like Meredith McNamara, this woman right here on the left, despite what she is saying, and a lot of people, you know, the loud majority when it comes to this transgender issue and this gender affirming care, you know, the loud majority say that if you don't support and, you know, affirm gender and support gender affirming care, that you will be part of the reason that a child may, you know, off themselves or be depressed or, you know, go down on a mental downward spiral. You'll be the reasoning for that because you don't affirm it. But she's saying, and what we've been saying for a while now, is that putting them on this fast track and putting them on this conveyor belt might lead them towards all of the things that you're saying not putting them on it will. You know, and the worst part is that she's really just trying to help and, you know, share the other side of the story that's not being portrayed as much. However, it's people that call her hateful or some sort of bigot or transphobe or whatever. You know, it really is sad that people don't have the common sense to just hear, you know, a different perspective on things without, you know, automatically labeling it as inherently bad or toxic or, you know, some sort of phobe. You know what I mean? She's just trying to help and she's just keeping it real. And I'm glad that she's doing what she's doing. I'm glad that I even watched this video and I'm glad to be sharing it with you guys, because all this does for me is further ground me in my arguments against this stuff. This just makes me believe what I believe even more, that this stuff should not be allowed for kids. It should not be allowed for minors, whether the parents agree with it or not. You know, a lot of times the parents just signing off on this stuff without the proper knowledge. You know, even the quote unquote experts in this field don't even have the proper knowledge. A lot of reviews support lack of evidence. A lot of the reviews show lack of evidence. They building the plane while they flying it. And these are the people who we supposed to trust and support and back 100% without question? No. No, sir. I don't think so. But that's it for the video, you guys. Please let me know what you thought about this in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe on your way out the door. And until next time, you guys, I'm out of here. Peace.